The Knicks game just finished up on this cool, crisp Thursday night, so I'm in a partially good mood. It's about to snow and I need a new car battery, so I'll figure that out once we get to that point. But you're not here to hear about my problems in life. You are here to hear about video game news, and we have something very interesting to discuss today. Now, I'm sure Stupid Spawn may have already covered this with his shoulder slightly askew, mouth slightly agape, holding on to those little hairs on the top of his head. Keep holding on, pal, because one day you're not going to have them. And I feel like that day is going to come sooner rather than later. But that's the fun thing about video game news. Everyone can talk about it because everyone has a different opinion on it. Now, yes, this is Nintendo Switch 2 related, and I know people have been hit with a barrage of these videos recently from people talking about unsubstantiated rumors and new leaks of games that haven't even been slightly hinted at or anything like that. But this is actually something you could sink your teeth into a bit more than some of those other stories. So if this is your first time on the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you check out some other videos on the channel too while you're here. But let's just hop straight into this. So this information is coming to us from the GDC 2024 State of the Game Industry, which involves 3,000 game industry professionals talking about various different things, such as the state of the games industry, talking about layoffs, the use of generative AI, return to office policies, and more. And I know you're looking at this article and you're like, what does this have to do with the title here? What does this have to do with the Nintendo Switch 2? And if you scroll through this, like really nothing. You know, people are talking about they're concerned about layoffs and stuff like that. Like, I don't talk about layoffs and stuff like that on this channel because it's not really gaming related stuff. Like, it's more of the business end of it. And like, as this medium continues to grow, like, yeah, you know, companies are going to be cost cutting and stuff like that because it costs more to make these games. You know, 1/3 of developers have switched to game engines. A lot of people are worried about the ethical use of generative AI, as they probably should be. Twitter sucks. We're not happy utilizing Twitter. What does any of this have to do with the Nintendo Switch? Well, like I said, in this sort of stuff, they also do kind of interviews where they talk with people about different things. And that's sort of how they get these answers. Like we just said, 4 out of 5 people were worried about Twitter. Well, out of these 3,000 people, they also ask questions such as, what is your current project that you are working on? What system is that being developed for? Now, we have this graph here to sort of break things down. And when you look at things, we got 66% are doing PC, 35% PlayStation 5, 34% Xbox Series X and S, Android, Nintendo Switch, older systems, and stuff like that. But then we get down to Nintendo Switch successor at 8%. Now, 8% doesn't really sound like a huge number or anything like that. But when you take into consideration that this is of 3,000 people, 8% translates to 250 people that did this anonymous survey, said that their next project is being designed for the Nintendo Switch successor. Now, that can mean some different things here, and that's sort of what we're going to break down in this, because I'm sure people are going to go with one sort of narrative with this, but I kind of have a different opinion on it. Do I think that some of these people that put into this survey are indeed working on Nintendo Switch 2 development kits or something authorized by Nintendo to basically be like, hey, this is indicative of our next platform? 100% I do. You know, do I think it's all 250? No, I definitely don't. But you have to imagine if this system, even if this system is not coming out till 2025, which I think would be absolutely ludicrous at this point, but even if that's the worst case scenario, of course companies are going to be making games for this system. They're going to have to develop these games. We're kind of under the assumption that companies have been developing games for the Switch 2 for at least a little bit of time. But if they're just getting, you know, dev kits now and stuff like that, like how much time will they have to do things like that? So I think it's completely within the realm of possibility that there are some higher up companies that are developing games for the Switch. Two, you have to remember something with this. Out of the 3,000 people that are being talked to, I'm sure a vast majority of these people aren't just smaller independent companies, and that's no slight to an independent company in any way, shape, or form. But when you look at an independent company, they're probably on the lower end of the spectrum, especially if there's someone that hasn't worked with Nintendo or made something that stood out to Nintendo on the current Nintendo Switch. As far as getting either information about what the Nintendo Switch 2 2 is going to be using, or having a development kit. But a company like Capcom, Koei Tecmo, like these are all companies we assume already have development kits since they've been strong partners of Nintendo with the Nintendo Switch. I'm sure you could include companies like Square Enix in that as well. Maybe even, other companies. There's a lot of third-party companies that have done a lot of stuff with the Nintendo Switch. Yes, some of that might have been older ports. Bandai Namco, you're going to tell me Bandai Namco in January of 2024 doesn't have a Nintendo Switch 2 development kit? You're crazy. You're out of your mind. But like I said, it's definitely not all 250 companies that have a development kit. So why would they say that their current project is being developed for the Nintendo Switch 2? That's just the diversity of game engines. If you have a general idea of what your game is going to be, and your game is multi-platform, because this is not talking about just exclusive titles, this is talking about multi-platform titles as well. So when you look at something like PlayStation 5, PC, Xbox Series X and S, probably people that are saying that their game is for that system are also saying that their game is at least planned to be on Nintendo's next hardware, because people are going to be looking for games to come out for their system. When you look at the launch of the original Nintendo Switch, it was a barren wasteland. That's why people had to hype up Has Been Heroes, which was a GameStop published game, because when the system came out, you had Breath of the Wild. I get those games confused. God, Breath of the Wild. You had Super Bomberman R. You had Ultra Street Fighter 2, The Final Challengers, which is a game that I like. I don't care. But that game came out in June for the system. So, it was a bit of a slow trickle because a lot of companies were a bit hesitant to get back under the Nintendo umbrella, especially after the failures of the Wii U. When you look at similar information comparative to basically companies working on the Nintendo Switch from that era. So 2017, the State of the Games thing that they did with this sort of thing, because they do this every year. That year, there was only 2% of companies working on stuff for the Nintendo Switch. 2% out of the 3,000 people. So obviously, that's a much, much smaller number than what we're dealing with now, but that's because of the hesitation of getting into this platform. There's also information involved in this that say 35% of the people interviewed were also very excited to be working on Nintendo's upcoming system, and that's what they're going to be trying to focus their efforts on as well. So I think this launch for the Switch 2 is going to be very, very different. This could potentially, I don't want to say that. No, you know what? I will say it because I like to put my ass out there sometimes. I think this launch could potentially rival stuff like the Dreamcast and the PlayStation 2 launches. If you look back at those launches of those two systems, we'll say launch windows, because when it comes to day one launches, the Dreamcast is the GOAT. Look at that. There's 18 games that came out, and 9 of them are freaking bangers for the Dreamcast. But, when you look at the launch window of the PlayStation 2, you had so much amazing content come out. And when you look at the launch window of the Nintendo Switch, it was similar for a lot of people. But when you look at that first year for the system, most of the bigger titles were, of course, first-party games, because Nintendo themselves knew that they had to gain back companies' trust in putting their games onto their platform. With this upcoming system, it's a completely different ballgame. You have all these people's trust. They look at things like hardware sales and software sales and what sells on what platform. And when you line it up, there's definitely a market for certain third-party games on the Nintendo Switch. But if you're a company that makes a more sort of generic third-party game that's kind of indicative of what you would see on a PlayStation or an Xbox, there's still room for you there too on the Nintendo Switch 2, because you're going to have a new audience. You're going to have people wanting to buy games when this system comes out, because they're going to want to see what this system is capable of. So I say all that to say, man, 250 devs. I think you could probably say maybe half of them actually have a dev kit. It really just depends. We never know what these companies are, who these companies are that they interview, but you would have to imagine that it's a lot of higher up people that are being asked these sort of things, because I feel like smaller studios, and no disrespect for them, but they could kind of potentially skew these numbers. And I don't know, maybe some people just lied on their little forum. They were like, yeah, I'm gonna say I'm working on the Switch too. You've seen companies do it before, people. Remember Seasons of Heaven or Story of Heaven or whatever? That was a freaking tech demo that everyone hyped up as a Switch 2. Hey, they fooled IGN, so shout outs to you guys if you're still around. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on this situation. I think it's pretty exciting. You know, we're getting more and more sort of concrete evidence of this system existing. We're getting more and more concrete evidence of something potentially happening soonish. I don't think it's going to happen before March 31st. I think once we hit April, then the floodgates can potentially open for this. But hey, we'll probably have another Nintendo Direct before then too, so that's something to look forward to. Let me know what you think of everything in the comments section down below. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Be sure to check out the 2 videos from yesterday. I was very excited for that Xbox presentation. Definitely made me look forward to playing my Xbox in 2024 and beyond, of course. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.